Hello, everybody. This is Greg Maurice, filling in for Paul. Paul will be back next week. This is Zaka Presents My Journey. We are creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Kim Rickards, who's an executive business partner at Cardlytics. Hey, Kim. How are you?
I'm well. How are you, Greg? Thanks for having me, by the way.
No, thank you. Like, we're super excited to have you on. Like, it's always refreshing to speak to somebody like who has contributed to so many companies. Like, before we start, can you tell us like about your background? Like, where were you born? Like, where did you grow up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Jamaican. So for those that don't know what that means that I am Jamaican, or I have Jamaican ancestry, but I was born here in America. So you put those two together as best possible and you get Jamaican. I grew up in New York City, specifically in Brooklyn. Shout out to Bed-Stuy. And over the time, I feel like I can claim Queens a little bit because after about 14, I moved to Queens and I was there until recently. So I guess I'll claim Queens a little. But yeah, that's a little bit about where I was born and where I grew up.
So I know for sure, like Queens, especially in New York, like that's like a hotbed for a lot of West Indians, right? So obviously, like you were around like a lot of Jamaicans and the Caribbeans. Am I right?
So when I lived in Bed-Stuy, not so much, but when I moved to Queens, yes. So it's very interesting. So growing up, my mom, although, love your people and all that, she did want us to have a little bit more diversity. So we were not always around a lot of Jamaicans outside of our family. We were mostly around, everyone else. Like in my neighborhood in Bed-Stuy, I'm just thinking we had Puerto Ricans, we had Black Americans, we had Africans, we had some Caucasians as well, from like Ireland, some people from Italy. We have a few different people. So it wasn't just Jamaicans. But over time, what I've come to learn is that you sort of kind of gravitate to people based on similarities, regardless of, where you are originally from. So that's what ended up happening when I moved to Queens. Kind of just became, whoever's cool, whoever has a solid moral compass, those are the people that I want to hang around. And that's exactly what I did.
No, of course. Like, tell me about like your childhood, like in Queens. Like, what was your dream job? What did you want to do? Like, how was it growing up over there?
Yeah, so well, most of my childhood was in Brooklyn, but then when I moved to Queens, this was around high school. And what I wanted to do, and it's so crazy because the school I went to was for law. So I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And yeah, I thought that I really did. And as I started to learn more about law, politics, the way that things work, I was like, well, this is not necessarily where I really believe I can use like the gifts that I had, even though those gifts were still, being nurtured. I felt like I'm a good conversationalist. I know how to argue a point, but do I really always want to have to argue a point, or do I really always want to have to defend something that I strongly believe in? Like, not so much. There's other ways to do it. So I quickly, after graduation, shifted from that law perspective to public relations, which, I still didn't end up fully pursuing. After getting a taste of it, I realized that was not necessarily for me either.
What about for you? Like, how did you learn those tools? Like, how to navigate like in corporate America?
Yeah, well, first of all, I feel that everyone's navigation guide in corporate America could be a little different depending on, your manager, your team, the company, and the culture, et cetera. But what I think I learned that helped me navigate was the importance of networking and connecting with people. And I was able to do that. And again, going back to even childhood, being able to do that with friends that I'm still friends with since I was 5. right? Like building those intentional relationships and then seeing where you can really lean in to help them and then where they can actually help you, because networking should always, in my opinion, be a mutual exchange as opposed to it being just like, I need this from you. Can you get it to me? Can you hook me up with that person? And in school, I believe that that was something that I was able to nurture from then. The ability to say, okay, you have these crayons, I have the paper. So let's meet together and let's actually share this. Or we take turns and we both fill out the same thing, like being that person that was able to look at the overall goal and saying, okay, well, how can I get to there? In corporate America, you really need to be able to do that because of the fact that a lot of times you're working collaboratively with people and not everybody knows how to do that, right? And not everybody knows how to kind of like put their own selfish, or I shouldn't say always selfish, but their own agenda and their own goals to the back in order to come to a place where for the good of all, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes there's a lot of ego that gets involved, and you can't take these things personally, right? As much as you may want to, you really can't. And then sometimes some people, they really want to do it all. Like they don't want you to work with them collaboratively. They're just like, you know what, I'll do it. And the reality is, while that may be great for some people, at the end of the day, you really have to look at beyond them pushing back to say, I'll do it on my own, because the reality is they may be burnt out and then something may fall through the cracks. So you're still going to need me. And instead of me rushing to clean this up at the end, let's actually do it from the beginning. So I do think that being able to, network and see where there's a need, how can I actually step in, or I have a need, who can I actually go to that can help me get there, has been a huge navigation for corporate America, because like I said, all the time you're working with people from different areas throughout, say, for example, a company or even an industry, and you need to be able to recognize who those people are in order for you to get what you need to get done.
You said something that resonated with me. Like you mentioned like intentional relationships, and also like,
yeah,
I know like from our audience, a lot of sometimes like the questions that I've, they always pose me like, how do you network, right? Because like most of our audience is underrepresented minorities. Like sometimes like
right.
they just don't know like how to build that intentional relationship, how to network. Like, do you have like any tips or any, I don't know, any insights on how to do that?
Yeah. So one thing that I say is, in order for you to network with intentionality, I think you need to take a step back to say, before I reach out to this person, let me do the research on them. Like fully research it, research who you're going to reach out to. And then as you look through and you see like professional experiences, and then you're like, okay, cool, they worked at this company. Before they got to that company, they were here. Start to see what similarities you may have with this person. Because when you build out your introduction, you don't want to just be like, hey, I saw you on, say, LinkedIn, and I want to connect with you. That doesn't really tell the person anything, right? What did you see? Why do you want to connect? Why do you think this is going to be a beneficial connection for the both of us? I think when people start to go into that level of setting those intentions, then they're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't need to reach out to, say, Greg right now, because where I am currently, Greg may be looking at me to say, I need you to be here. And then you can say to yourself, like, I'm going to get there, then I'll reach out to him because I'll have more to add to that relationship. Like people have to look at it that way too, because it's great. Sometimes you're like, I'm going to connect with everybody. Like these people, they work at this company and I want to do this with them, or I think I can bring this to the table. But then when you really step back, you're like, wait a second, baby steps. Before I get there, let me do a few more things so that by the time I do reach out to them, they are more interested to really pursue things further. Because a lot of people have been burnt by reaching out before they were truly ready. And then they didn't get the response they desired. And then they were upset, And in that moment, they're feeling like, forget this, I don't want to do this again. But it's a learning, because instead of just being okay with saying like, okay, it didn't work out, that's when you can actually ask them, is it something that I did? Is this not a good time?
Right.
Again, intentionally asking those questions, because that person may say, you know what? Yeah, this was not a good time for me. And maybe you should reach out to me in 3 to 6 months. And when you do reach out, this is what I would like to hear from you. Or you say to this person, I'll reach back out to you in X amount of time. And by then I should have X and Y, Z, accomplished. And then we can take it from there. Like, when you do things that way, people, I think, are more prone to be like, okay, this person is actually serious about connecting with me. And they may be, again, more interested in investing in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Is it like okay to assume like whenever like you trying to connect with somebody, even though there's like that intention behind it, like for you to assume that that person is automatically thinking like, hey, this person wants something from me?
I think sometimes people are definitely thinking that. They're like, what do you want? I think that that's just the natural thing to think when someone, especially someone you don't know, reaches out to you. You're like, okay, what's this about? And that's when I think in that position, sometimes you want the highlight reel. You're like, okay, get to the point.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are even in that space, you still have to kind of think, well, this is how I think, at least. I'm always thinking of, I've probably been in this person's shoes before. So I never want to come across as someone who's just automatically shutting someone down. So I'm always open to at least listening or reading or, following up, because I'm like, okay, well, somebody has to help them get there, and not everybody knows. So
Right.
I lead with a little bit more compassion, but some people, honestly, they don't. And they feel kind of like, before you talk to me, this is what you should have done. And you're like, okay, well, yeah, you're right. But maybe they just didn't know. So how do you help them? And that's kind of where, again, me being more of a, I would say, intentional and thoughtful person, my approach is a little different. But I have worked with people that they don't have the time.
Right.
They're like,
Mm-hmm.
this person seems great. I just don't have the time to deal with this right now or to respond to this message. And sadly, the other person on the other end may never hear from them.
Right.
And now they feel bad. Right. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So after you graduated, what was your first job after college, and how did that
Yeah.
open your eyes?
Yeah. So my first job after college was at the Make-A-Wish Foundation, where I interned. And how did that open my eyes? I think what I learned, well, first of all, if anyone has ever worked in nonprofit, you will have the ability to do like a little of everything. So some people would say you're the jack of all trades, master of none, because you're kind of just doing so many things. And being a person that loved the mission of the company, I was very invested in, how can I do this? Like, oh, we have a gala coming up. That's wonderful. What can I do outside of just like setting up like vendors in the system to be paid, for example? Like, what else can I do? Oh, I can write stories. Okay, great. What else can I do? Oh, I can write a press release. Again, going back to that formal college education. Let me do that. Oh, what else can I do? So like for me, that was the perfect example of me using education and then real life to fulfill a need that the company had. So I learned a lot there. And while I was there, I also started to learn a lot about myself, because I'm like, wow, this feels like meaningful work. Like you're doing things and you can see the results in a Wish family's life. Like you see that, oh, those hours on hold waiting for, say, a travel agent to pick up the phone actually made a difference in a child's life and their family's life, because it made them happy in the moment where their health wasn't the best. So you kind of, again, take away any type of selfish motives or any type of frustration. You put that to the back burner and you realize that you're doing something that's going to bring someone joy, which is pretty much the company's intention. So that job to me was actually pretty cool to have, especially graduating college or after graduating college, because I don't think everybody gets to have like a fun job that they like after they graduate.
No,
So I think I was blessed with that.
no, that's awesome because you were able to basically like learn so many skills. And
Mhm.
after that, is that how you transitioned to I guess, entertainment? You started working at Viacom.
Yeah, so I was at the Make-A-Wish Foundation for a year and 6 months. And then a girlfriend of mine's, she actually is the one who said to me that I should apply to work for Viacom. And I didn't know anybody at Viacom. So I was kind of like, okay, let's see what happens. And I put the application in, did the interviews, and then I got the job. And that to me, I think was where I started to learn even more about, corporate America, myself, the world around me. Again, a second very, very fun job. So I think in my early career was blessed with working at places that I had fun coming to work.
Mhm.
Like it didn't feel like work. It
Right.
felt like, oh, you're hanging out with your friends and you get paid to do this. It's like, um, but there was a lot of work that happened, right? But you just had fun doing it because of the environment. And let's not be, I would say, let me not make it seem like it was always super duper fun, because especially in corporate America, people know it is competitive. It is pretty much a place where you can sink or swim. You do have to have thick skin, right? Like you have to know that in the midst of all the great things you're doing, sadly, you may come to a place where someone's just like, you're doing great work, you are great, but we just don't need that role anymore. So those are the realities of, any job. But I think for me, being at Viacom, learning as much as I did, and what I did there was work in the affiliate sales and marketing org as an executive assistant. And I was able to, I mean, talk about learning about campaigns and attending events such as like award shows, being a part of TV station launches and different things of that nature. Like amazing opportunity, right? And a place where I was able to say, do I want to go into sales or want to go into marketing? Like, what does that look like? Do I want to, like, do I really want to be a salesperson? Like all that. I had the opportunity to think and do that on the job, like hands-on experience, and decide what was for me. And I realized I was like, I don't think I'm a seller. That's not really for me. But I like working with them, So again, like how can I intentionally be like a resource to the people that are in this particular field or in this particular role? How can I help them do their jobs better? So yeah, that was a lot of the learnings or the questions that I started to ask myself while at Viacom. And those are the lessons that I started to learn, like who do you really want to work with? What industry do you know, what industry that you want to work in? Like all those type of things start to come into play when you are growing in your career and you're essentially trying to find, where exactly you feel that there's that purpose, like the purpose driven work.
Like, what were like some of the I guess biggest challenges that you faced over there?
At Viacom, I think some of the challenges again were the fact that you are working in a very cross-functional manner.
Hmm.
You don't always work with people that are understanding, people that are kind, people that are nurturers. You don't always work with people that are organized. So a lot of times you're basic again, you're on your own sometimes or
Hmm.
a lot of times where you have to be that person that's like, okay, I have to get this and this and that done. And I only have 2 pieces of information to get all of this stuff done. And I have to get it done by 7 o'clock tonight. So let me figure it out. Um, that was definitely for me a challenge in that it showed me how to operate in a rapidly changing environment, like how to think on the fly, how to be more solution oriented, how to show up to an executive, for example. Not again, everybody is different, everybody's style is different,
Hmm.
but working with executives that had super busy schedules that were not always directly in your face in the office, and you have to get information from them, like how do you do this? And I started to learn like, okay, you have to come with a solution. So you tell them, this is what I did, and here's where I need your help. Like, this is the solution that I'm presenting to you. Let me know if you agree or not. People start to appreciate that because it takes one less thing off of them. So the challenges that I was facing with getting or not having enough information actually helped me to learn how to have little information and how to still be successful, to get the job done.
Yeah. And you have to be proactive, right?
Oh, absolutely proactive. And then also, again, relying on your community. Like for me, networking, huge thing, right?
Mm.
And my community while there was massive. Like when I tell you, we would lean on each other for like everything. We would have these meetups literally like in elevator banks in the lodge, which is the cafeteria at Viacom and 1515 Broadway. Like you talk to people on the elevator, you're like, hey, I got this information. What did you get? And they're like, oh, yeah, no, this is the other stuff that's going on with that project. It's like, oh, thank you. Let me go to my desk and let me do that. Or you pick up the phone and you're like, hey, this is what this person is working on. Do you know anybody that can help with that? Oh, cool. Come across the street or, head to this person and they'll give you more information. So community was really, really big. And everybody that I worked with understood that we were all there to get the job done, but we all wanted to see each other win. So there was still that background of like, we're supporting each other, even though we're in different roles. Like, I want you to be successful here as well. So what can I do to help you? And I think, again, I can't say anything, but I was blessed to have that because everyone does not.
No.
Yeah.
That's dope. Like after your time at Viacom, I know you switched industry like to go work at American Express. So what were like your biggest takeaways like from your experience there, and how is like the financial industry like different than entertainment? I know it's like a big shift, right?
Oh yeah, very big shift. Well, one thing I would say is that entertainment industry is not as buttoned up as the financial industry. I felt that finance was, some people would not agree with me, but I felt like for my personality and my work style, it was boring. A lot of learning, right? But it's just, I felt it was a slower pace. It picked up a lot of times around specific things, like if you had a board meeting coming up, if you had earning calls that you had to prepare for, things of that nature, then it picked up. It was like, we got to get this, we have to push this deadline. But outside of that, it's pretty, for me, a little mundane because I did the same things from 10 to 6, Monday through Friday. And I had not had that. Even at the Make-A-Wish Foundation, that was not how it was. We didn't have what we would call like the traditional day because every day literally was something different. And for me, one of the things that I say was a big takeaway was working with people that were truly invested in the company and they really cared about their work. And for me, I'm like, wow, this is pretty dope. Because again, it felt similar to kind of like the Make-A-Wish Foundation where everybody was there and everybody understood like we're here to bring others joy. On the corporate side at Amex, it was more so like we are all pretty smart people and we're invested in making sure that we do not screw things up, that we continue this level of excellence that the brand has, like that was truly important. So you saw that reflected in people's work, like someone could circulate a training document, for example. It's a presentation, internal training, and it would be like 3 different people proofreading it. And you're kind of like, does it take 3 different people? But yeah, it took 3 different people for people to say, you know what, this is what we're focused on. And we want when people are speaking about the brand and they're, upselling someone on a card to introduce them to new offers that they know what they're talking about. That type of intentionality to me was like, wow, this is actually cool because it was done with a level of compassion as well. Like, we get it. You probably feel like we're doing this and it feels a little redundant, but here's why we're doing it. Right. And that was a takeaway because of the fact that coming from faster paced environments, right? You were kind of on your own. You had to think on the fly, but then going to a company where things were slower,
Mm-hmm.
And although they were still making sure that they hit those deadlines, right? They were just doing it in ways that felt a little bit more strategic, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more collaborative, even where everyone's role, if you will, had a specific purpose, and everyone felt like they were able to carry out their duties with excellence because they understood what their role was.
Like from listening to you, like what I like is like how your first job after college, right, at the nonprofit prepared you like
Oh
basically
yeah.
like to be ready like to work in so many different industries because after
Mhm.
like your time in entertainment and finance, like I know like you transition into in the tech space, like working at
Yeah.
LinkedIn and Pinterest with like
Mhm.
two major companies, right? Like
Yeah.
how was it hard for you? Was it even hard for you to get a job there? Because most of the times, like sometimes, like some of our audience, they ask, like, man, how do you guys get a job through those companies? Like, what do you guys do for that? So how was your
Mhm.
time? Obviously, like working like for those for those companies.
Yeah. So hard is it's all objective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was it hard to get a job there? I'm going to say that I didn't feel like it was hard. I
Mm-hmm.
think more than anything, it was more so understanding the level of experience that you currently have and where you can be of value in that particular organization or that company. And what I mean by that is, I think sometimes with the way how people tend to be when they are in an interview process, they sometimes start to cower in their ability because they're so kind of like focused or marveled
Mm-hmm.
at the company.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, it's like you are a value add to the company, right? So don't let your light shine because of this bigger brand, if you will.
Right.
Um, and that's something for me. It was always like I know what I can bring to the table, and I'm confident in what I can bring to the table because I've been able to work in previous roles where I've done my job with success and I've done it with efficiency. So when interviewing to transition into a new environment or a new industry, because tech was a whole new industry for me, it was more so relying on that, like, okay, well, and I will say this, let me back up. So
Mm-hmm.
for LinkedIn, and similarly for Pinterest as well. So a recruiter from LinkedIn reached out to me on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was recruited to work there, right? So someone saw something in me
Mm-hmm.
or in my background
Right.
and essentially thought like, oh, this person can bring more value to this company and to this role and to this new executive that was stepping into role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that being said, that recruiter built a relationship with me over the course of months because when I interviewed for LinkedIn, I was interviewing for another company as well, another tech company. So because of that, I was very candid with her. I was like, well, this is what's going on with me currently. This is another company that's pursuing me actively. And, why should I join LinkedIn? Like keeping it real. Why should I join LinkedIn over this company? And she was like, well, let's talk about it. So again, knowing where you can bring something to the table is important, or what you can bring to the table is very important. And being confident of that or in that, because of the fact that when you do get that job, you're going to have to basically put your money where your mouth is, right? Because you have to stay employed. So I think that sometimes when people are like, was it hard? You got to think of all the things that led you to that place where you're taking the interviews now. So everything leading up to that may have been hard, but you pushed through it. And for me, that's exactly how I looked at it. Like, okay, I had some challenges in this place, in this area, but I was able to push and manage through that. So going into a new space, I'm even more compelled to learn from my my past and actually use all these things to make me even more of a value asset to the new role. So long story short,
Yeah.
I don't think that it was hard for me. I think that it was more so a part of the plan that I was supposed to go into tech.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I think that that's really what it was.
Uh,
Because to stay in the industry, yeah, you start to see that it's challenging. It's not always going to be easy or feel easy. So yeah, subject. I think that that question's you got to just, yeah.
you said something that I love, right? Because you met because sometimes like we when we go to interviews like for those bigger brands, like you get overwhelmed, like,
Yeah,
but you flip the table, like you make them like sell you into why you should join their company, right? It's not like
absolutely.
you start interviewing them like those. So I love that you put that together.
Yeah, and I want people to understand you have to be very confident in who you are, right?
Mhm.
Even if you only have 2 years of experience, the reality is that you still have experience.
Right,
So,
right.
you don't have to, or you should not diminish your experience because of, oh, it's this brand. And oh my God, they're doing this, their stock price is at this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's great. But you still have something of value that will continue to make that company successful should you take a role there.
Mhm.
But don't make anyone make you feel as if you are less than or that you should be in a place of begging, if you will, to work for someone, because if you think about it, we spend a lot of time at our jobs.
Mhm.
And if we're spending so much time there, and chances are you might have to make sacrifices of, you may miss something with your family, your friends. You may not be able to do certain things that you yourself may have wanted to do. So you got to put that on a back burner because of work. If you think about all of that, in reality, it's like, yeah, why do I want to work here? Like, why?
Mhm.
So it's the recruiter or whomever, hiring manager's job, everyone on the panel of the interview panel, it's all of their jobs essentially to pretty much sell you on joining that team and that company. So don't just go into the interview like, oh my God, I'm so thankful, which you should be, and you should be grateful. But at the same time, you should understand that you are
Mhm.
still the value.
No, no, that's for sure. Like, thank you, like, for stating that. Uh,
Yeah.
so you work for some of the biggest companies, like in the world, right? Like, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, like, or
Mm.
career advancement, like for people of color, like, what
Mhm.
are like your experiences, and also like some of the things that you think can get better?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that can, that's a whole other episode, Greg. There's a lot that can get better. I think a lot of companies are tapping into how they can truly be diverse in how they are engaging their underrepresented groups and how they are truly trying to help them advance. And in my experience, supporting some of the most senior people at these pretty big companies, I think what I've seen is that a lot of the leaders have started to understand the importance of paying attention, the importance of listening, the importance of um, really taking 2 steps back, if you will, kind of going back down, like they would say it's a skip level, but the reverse of that, going back down to that person that may be mid-level manager to
Mhm.
understand what do they need in their role in order to be successful. How can we really help them, empower them to do their job with excellence and to also want to be in a place where we can position them for advancement. People are starting to understand that you gotta go back because a lot of times people in senior positions, they don't remember this, Greg. They're like, I'm here now. They
Right,
forgot. It took
right.
them X amount of time to get there. They
Mhm.
forgot the pain points they experienced when they were there,
Mhm.
So now I feel I'm seeing more people taking a pause to step back and say, okay, well, what do they need? What do they need? And then understanding their privilege where they are, right? And saying, okay, well, I have access to this that person doesn't, but how can I get them access where they are?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you start to do that, then you really start to have more of an inclusive environment. You start to have a very diverse workforce, right? And diversity, as you and I both know, is not just based on like age, sex, you know, your educational background, things like that. Like it really goes down to even your work style, you know, like, are you a collaborative person? Are you not? Are you more of an introvert or an extrovert? Like all these things encompass diversity to me. And when people start to really think through that, I think that's where they start to be more intentional about creating the teams that they want to have working with them or for them,
Mm-hmm.
and who they want to work with, period. And then they become even more intentional about succession planning. Like, how can I prepare Greg currently to advance to that next step so that in the next 2 to 3 years, I can move out of role and he can move into it. Like all of those things are the things I feel currently I'm noticing people in a lot of the, or I should say, I'm noticing senior leaders start to think about, which is really good because I don't think that that was always happening before, sadly. Yeah.
I know we have a couple minutes left before like we finish. So before you go, like I wanted to ask you, like, can you tell us like why is it so hard, like for I guess people like us, like underrepresented minorities, like to feel comfortable at most company like they work for?
Mm-hmm. I'll say this. I think that it's hard for minorities to feel comfortable because sadly, a lot of people aren't leading with this human compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I think people sometimes are more focused on the work instead of the individual or the people that do the work. So it's hard for you to come to work as your full authentic self when chances are you don't feel anybody even cares. You know, like you show up and you probably had a really rough weekend. Nobody really probably even asked that, like, how are you? You know, like there's a lot of, I would say, moments where there have been missed opportunities for people to lean in and actually care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they just don't care. So it is not easy to come to the company that you work for and be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, or this is why I'm having a hard time getting X, Y, and Z project, because there's this fear of retaliation. You know, some people, they feel that if they appear to be weak, you know, then they're looked at like, you know what, Greg's not performing, we got to get him out of here. Instead of it being a truthful moment of, I need help. Right. Like people don't feel confident and they don't feel like they can say that. So because of that, it's uncomfortable, you know, and I don't think that it's a fair thing. I do think that that's definitely something that needs to change. Like we really have to have environments where people feel safe being honest. You know, like, okay, yes, you want people to show up authentically. Well, guess what? Let's create safe spaces where they can honestly share and not have a fear behind what they're saying, you know, or some maliciousness where someone may say something is miscommunicated and now they're in a position that they're like, I didn't even ask to be here.
Right.
That's not, you know, that's not really a cool thing. So I do think that a lot of times when people are in positions where they can't fully trust their leadership, or they can't fully trust that what they're saying or how they may feel, or, you know, the work that they're doing, whether it's good work or not, they can't trust that they will have any sort of grace. It makes it really hard.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. You have a wide range of experiences, right? In entertainment, tech, finances. Like, how do you fulfill like your passion when you have so much to offer?
Well, Greg, I think that's a work in progress. Yeah, again, I said it in the beginning, but for me, coming from a family that's service oriented, I have a passion for people and to help them. So for me, it's a constant, how can I help? That's a constant question that I'm mulling over. And I have different ways of how I'm doing that. But I'm currently working on how can I bring it into one space instead of it being so many different spaces, like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Like, okay, well, how can I actually centralize, if you will, the effort and really do things and not feel so tired or burnt out because that's a real thing that happens. When you have a heart for people, people will drain you.
I feel you on that. Yeah.
They will drain you, right?
Yeah.
So trying to put things into perspective as well as balance so that I am not like an empty well, that I'm able to really pour into others from a very generous place and not feel that I'm frustrated, I'm tired, like I feel overwhelmed. I can't really do X, Y, and Z to the best of my ability because I'm not putting some time and some effort back into myself, which is a huge thing too. People talk about self-care. It's not just a hashtag, it's a real thing. We really do have to take time to do things that are going to help us be our better selves and to show up in a place or in a space where we are bringing our best foot or putting our best foot forward. And sometimes that even means taking a step back from doing the very same things that you're passionate about and actually saying, I need a moment to not do that so I can actually get me together. So when I start to do that again, I'm doing it 10 times better. So yeah.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, before we get before we bounce out of here, like, what are you working on now? And I guess short-term goals that you have.
Yeah, I think so. I answer the short-term goal first, and then it kind of goes back into what I'm working on. So the short-term goal for me is to get clarity on how to move forward, because I do have my company, Manifest, which is essentially a resource community for professionals of color and entrepreneurs as well. And what we've been able to do is provide resources for them to help them manifest their best life and to manifest those goals, right? But now I'm like, okay, well, some of the resources that we were providing, like events, podcasts, partnership, etc., how do I do this with more intentionality? So getting the clarity on the how and the when is what I would say my short-term goals are. But that's essentially what I'm working on.
I love it. Obviously, like a lot that you are doing align with what we're doing. So hopefully in the near future, we can partner and work together.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think this would be an amazing opportunity for people to see two people of color that are actually doing it instead of just like the lip service, right?
Got it. Well, I'm putting the intention out right now. We're going to manifest it and we'll make it happen.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much, like, for coming on. I know we discussed a lot today, so I want to thank you so much. Like, basically, like, just to come on and tell me about your journey, and I know our audience is gonna love it. It's gonna resonate for a lot of us. So, if you want to hear more about more stories like Kim, like, check us out on ZakaConnect.com, or you follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcast. Kim, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Greg. Thank you.